do because Javier just sounds too formal. With that being said, y'all, this is Javi Santana, the king of coffee, the king of a lot of things. Brother, the summit is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. James, are you all right? I don't know if there's a pill for that. My name is Javier, if you don't know already, Santana, no relation to Carlos. By the way, I do want to acknowledge my fellow Boricua from before. Beautiful speech. Thank you for sharing your heart. We don't know each other. We know of each other, I'm sure. But I resonate with a lot of what you said. Um, so welcome to this. Also, Doug and Lisa, who I heard you guys in full. I love what's happening here. There's a resonating kind of theme, and obviously it was kind of structured by the framework. But I love that none of us conspire to speak to each other and ends up being this nice thread that kind of everybody complements each other. And one thing you said, Raquel, was, sharing our stories. And it's something that, for a long time I pushed back on. Michael would always make fun of me about that. I was like, who wants, you want to hear my story? Do you have 10 hours? It's like, so, but, I understand the importance of doing that and the importance of continuing to show up in these things, in these events and support each other. So David, thank you for putting this together. Again, you're awesome. That was a great day at Animal Kingdom. That was a lot of fun. Um, by the way, the background behind me is because I'm putting my house on the market and I have to take all my stuff down and repaint everything. So everything's gone. Um, Before I get started, I do want to touch on one more thing. What's going to jump in the discussion? You talked about drivenness, Doug and Raquel. That was my drug for a long time. I mean, that's kind of how I stay busy. Same with you, Dev. You brought that up too. Um, we got to pay attention to those things. What are we doing that's used to mask something else? So that's a little side thing. But back to me, I am from Puerto Rico originally. Grew up in Northern Virginia, DC area, and now I'm in Delaware, in the great state of Delaware. I've been here most of my adult life. I came here to play baseball back in the early 90s, with a name like Javier Santana playing second base. I figured just give me the contract and, playing the games here didn't happen. So I shifted over and went into a career of in advertising, commercial art. Now it's obviously more marketing and communications and branding. That's what I do. I am a serial entrepreneur. I own a marketing communications agency, branding agency, and I am going to launch a coffee lifestyle brand later this year. Been working on that for a good year, getting that solid. It's called Vivir Coffee Company. Vivir is to live in Spanish, if you don't know. Um, so before I dive into my talk, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about. We talked a lot about these conversations about grief, and I thought about what do I approach? I like to always find this little caveat, this little part that I can kind of nudge in and create a little space within the larger space, and have it be interesting and also add value to the whole, because everybody adds value and our stories are very unique, but that the different stories is the common thread. But I was last night purposely kind of how can I turn this around and kind of bring a different kind of point of view, but also stay true because it needs to align with what I've experienced. I don't want like to talk about things in theory. If I haven't experienced it, I'm not going to talk about it from authority. So Lisa talked a little bit about the having the bravery to open your heart and love again. I love that. Raquel, you touched a lot on a lot of things that I resonated with. So there's going to be some common themes there. But what I'm going to do is change the perspective of this whole thing, staying in alignment, David, with the framework. Um, but instead of talking about the risk of loving again, maybe I'm going to talk about the risk of staying closed after a loss, because that's where I've been in the last year. Putting up walls. Didn't realize I was doing it. Um, so I'm not going to really talk about grief. I'm not going into the denial part of grief. I'm going to talk more about the subtle danger of surviving something hard, whatever that is, because we all have the things we go through. But but then quietly shrinking your life because of it. And I was doing that a lot in my life. Um, for those, I mean, a lot of you have heard my story, but I'm going to kind of glazed over it in my recent, I'm 55 years old, so there's a lot of stories in my story. But after my divorce, you know, a year and a half ago, of 28 years, it was 33 years with my ex-wife, the mother of my three daughters. I didn't lose a marriage. I actually lost a version of my life that I thought would actually last forever. So I want to bring perspective to that. 28 years marriage, 33 years with the same person. I'm 55 now, so most of my life was with her. So I divorced in 2004, um, separated since 2022 summer. So when my point here is when something long ends, and look, a lot of you have talked about the science of this. Your brain doesn't categorize it neatly. It kind of, oh, this is a transition or this is something else. I mean, my nervous system was grieving. There was a loss. It felt like a death. And it was a really interesting thing because I'm on the other side of that. But now that I talk about it, um, my my future kind of died. I thought I was going to be this person for the rest of my life. So what do you do now? Um, so everything was locked in. I was moving forward, and so part of what died was the identity I created or that I thought I had. It was the death of a story that I thought I was going to live forever. And that grief is real. I mean, and I know here we don't compare because in Michael's words, everybody has their hard, so your heart and my heart, so I love that we don't do that we're here with each other just to support. um but I did grieve, and what I did after that was very important. I made a choice at that moment, not to numb, because I had numbed my entire life. I made a choice to begin to feel, and a few folks have talked about that today. I didn't spiral. I didn't. I actually looked for help. And by the way, I mean, asking for help has a huge ROI. I recommend it highly. Uh, I leaned on others. That's not, culturally speaking, I'm a Latino man. Suck it up. I'm Gen X. I mean, you bleed. Take the blood out and keep going. But having three Gen Z daughters have kind of softened me a little bit. They feel all their feels. So I'm like, always around them. So they've been a good influence on me. But I kept my head up, and I didn't pretend that it didn't hurt. I stepped into it. I decided to feel every part of that, and it was incredibly. I mean, looking back, it's fine, but it was awful. But I don't want the other side of that. But I went into this journey of discovery. I started focusing on me. I realized that is a category, like taking care of yourself. That was a new thing for me. Wow, it's not selfish to take care of yourself. It's actually the most selfless thing that you do. That these are new themes of, with the people I was around that I was learning. So I woke up, and I chose to wake up after being asleep for decades, looking back. I went inside, and I started feeling again, and not coasting, and I decided to live my life on purpose, and I made a decision to move forward. And I call this my second adulthood. I decided that um, this would be the beginning of something rather than the end of something. And did I plan it? I did not. I didn't plan it. I just came, and that was the reality. Um, but it was real, and whether I liked it or not. So after my midlife crisis or awakening, actually, what I ended up and I'm looking back at what happened here. I did something subtle, and this is I'm bringing the point home here. I made an agreement, and this is now in retrospect. I didn't realize this until recently. Um, by the way, I'm going to define what that means. It's not like the four agreements in the book. It's more like a declaration. And we do this when something happens. Like, in my agreement was I will never hurt like that again. Kind of, and I'm looking back at what that is. You know, I didn't realize it at the time. But these are dangerous agreements and declarations we make. I will never, I will always, dot, dot, dot. When things happen, we create these agreements and it feels mature, it feels like it's right. And but what happens is I put up these walls because I needed to protect my heart from and that agreement started becoming a value per se. In a and I was getting better. I started healing because I chose to heal and because healing is a choice. And I started focusing on my well-being and physically, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually, like really starting that second adulthood. I had my three daughters and I you know, I the my initial decision to kind of move forward was for them, but then it quickly became for me too, because I need to be whole in order to be. I'm no good for the world if I'm not whole. Um, so I needed to get whole. I have two businesses. I have a lot of connections here where I am. I have purpose. I have roots. I'm very proud of my roots and my heritage. I have a big community that I'm part of, and many, here locally, also with you guys and these amazing folks. Life is full, right? So, but I told myself, I'm fine. I don't need anything else. I'm good alone. There's no place for anybody or anything else in any area of my life. I'm in a good place. And all of that was true in some ways. But what I'm realizing, and this is where kind of I wanted to touch on, is there was one door that I locked. And I built wall right around that door, and I chose to lock it. And I knew it, and it was on purpose. Because when you survive like a rupture of any kind, like I think protecting yourself feels like responsible, feels like the adult thing to do. For me, it like felt honorable. It felt mature and safe. Like, let me do this. I need to protect. But looking back, I learned that the problem with building walls isn't that they keep the pain out. What they actually do is that they keep life out, and that's what was happening to me. The walls that I was creating were preventing me from really fully living and living a full life. But there was one door that was closed and locked. So, you know, when people say like, they're afraid to love again, I was started analyzing that. I get it. And I've been there. Um, I'm starting to realize that, I can't speak for everybody, only for myself, but that's not actually what I meant. I don't think like people fear love. I think we fear obviously loss and we fear grief, the pain that brings. I know that's what I did, and that's painful and hurts, and we want to avoid pain. You know, I mean, I think love at the core is very rewarding. It can hurt, but loss is what really tightens the chest, the fear of losing. So you protect that, right? I was protecting that, and that feeling when something like collapses or breaks down, or when it doesn't work out, when you don't know like how you're going to breathe through an event, something that happens, and not always a death. But that's what I felt, right? That tightness in my chest. I always point to my chest as this tightness. So what I do is like hunker down and I protect what I have, build the wall, and I can't lose anymore. Maybe you've been betrayed or you've been hurt or you've whatever the case, will you put up the walls? This can't happen to me again. This won't happen to me again. I can't lose again. I can't feel that pain again. And in that moment, it actually makes sense. And that's it's interesting when you're experiencing things in the moment, it's really a blessing when you're seeing it happen. But many times you just, in retrospect, you start kind of summarizing what happened. That this is what I'm looking back, what I was doing. And it makes sense after losing your spouse of 28 years and being with them for 33 years. Also, it makes sense after losing a child or losing your dream or losing your business or your money or after a betrayal or after a divorce, after a diagnosis. It makes sense to protect. But what I've found is that the dangerous thing here, it's a very dangerous thing, is most of us don't close all at once. It doesn't just happen. I didn't just lock the door. It's a slow drip. And I didn't say I'm going to stop living. I just started guarding, and the more bricks I put in this wall, the less I felt, and the more and I got busy again. So I started going to these patterns of just getting busy, and that busyness became my numbing mechanism after the awakening. It's like, so I stopped risking. I stopped, opening up. I don't think I was there yet, but I was heading towards not trusting fully. Maybe getting a little cynical. Um, like stopping, allowing like parts of myself to engage in different things. I'm very guarded. People that are close to me know this because I've been told recently by several individuals, like they see it. No, 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 I'm not going to do that. Like very, very, very closed. Um, so it's not numbness per se. I think it was functioning, and I was responsible. I was steady, and that's kind of, I felt like that's what I needed to do. So moving forward to kind of bring this point home, I think what another point I want to bring is that self-awareness is a very important part of this, and we talk about it in these circles and it becomes a buzz term. Um, we have to be very attentive, and I'm learning again, even to this day, of our feelings, and why are we responding a certain way, and that's what the journey I've been on. I woke up again. I realized that there was another awakening in this realization of these walls. There was a wall, and I didn't realize how firmly I had built it. But what happened was, after I saw that I wasn't letting people in. So the moment that I realized that and what it was doing to me, that's when things started turning around. So, let me shift, and I'm going to bring this home. Um, when we talk about strength after losing somebody, um, most people think that it means something becomes hard, and that's what I thought. But becoming stronger, um, I feel it's more like putting that shell that I was talking about, the wall. People become more guarded, more independent, more self-sufficient. They become, um, they say they. I created a dialogue that was defending me, and I'm very thankful for the community I'm around, the people that love me, that loved on me, to call me out and say, look, you're not, you, that's BS. Do you really believe that? And they do it in love. Um, Grieving is so important and so vital to healing. Um, but I'm realizing that the real strength is not actually becoming harder. Like through my experience, I thought, and through my journey, like I feel that the strength that I gotten, and the strength is actually to stay open. And my word for the year is be, simple word, be open, regardless, like start risking again. That's the revelation that I've recently had, um, in the way I'm starting to live my life now, to stay open without understanding that there's a risk in feeling and hurting, and not creating those uh, agreements that build that wall. Um, so I think the other part that I wanted was to double back on the awakening. I had this awakening, and then there was the second one that I mentioned just happened recently. Um, um, I talked at a previous event about time, and I realized that time obviously doesn't pause, and we can be recovering And we know this, and it just keeps going and going and going. Time continues to move on, whether we like it or not. So I could be in that mode of defense all the time, but at the same time, I'm missing out on life because time doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for me to be ready. It continues, and we can choose to engage and to live, or I can choose to like retreat and hide. And it time doesn't care about the good intentions I have, or it just keeps moving. And at 55, even though I'm not an old guy, I'm not a young guy either, I'm starting to feel that time. And I'm realizing that even though I was grieving and there's things that I need to go through, I have to enter into living rather than just sit in neutral and let things pass by. Um, so checking out is not an option. Resignation is not an option. You know, that's the ultimate lesson here. After loss, something splits inside of you, and what happens is that we have to make a decision about where we want to go and how we want to react. So my point, bringing it home here, is there's a version of you that grieves, and that version is allowed to grieve, and I'm grieving, and I'm on the other side of it. But there's moments that flare up in my life that remind me of those moments, and I have to honor those and understand that they're there. But that doesn't mean I have to stop my life and stop living while I'm processing that. And part of that is being around incredible people. Um, and and that's the big lesson for me. Um, so if you're here kind of quietly um, figuring out how to love again or how to feel again, what I would recommend is to just allow yourself to let those emotions run their course. It is an interesting place to be when you start. For me, when I stopped numbing and I started feeling, and I really felt alive. And it's interesting because the other day I was we had a big ice storm here in the Northeast, and I was taking the trash can out to the front of the, because it's trash day, and this thing ran over my toe, and it hurt like crap. And at that moment, I stopped, and I remember the old me. I would have been like cursing the world and throwing stuff. And no, I didn't like the pain, but I realized, man, it's good to be alive. I really feel that. That's amazing, you know. So these are things in the micro that now I understand, and I realize that it is so important, especially when we see cultural differences and gender things that people impose on how guys are and whatever. Uh, um, I we have to take personal responsibility for who we are and what we are, and understand that there's that part of life is to feel and to risk um, betrayal, to risk pain, because when we try to numb that, we numb everything, and you can't like be selective about it. It's all or nothing. Um, so the lesson for me here has been to allow myself to feel, work through that, learn how to communicate that with people around me, be around people who love on me, who give me tough love, and who know that story. Because now, as I lean on others and I grow, because I have blind spots, I have a better uh, chance of succeeding and doing the things I want to do, rather than try to do it by myself in a silo, because we can't do that. We're no good to others if we lose heart. And so my challenge to you is like reclaim your heart. If you lost heart, get that back. There's a lot that you can accomplish in your life, and there's still a lot to accomplish. And if you made it past that, whatever that loss is, you're here. Raquel, you've tried a few times, obviously, to take your life, but you're here. God wants you here. And you have so much to give. All of you do. So that's my encouragement to all of you. So the question is, are you willing to do that? And are you open? And I encourage you to stay open.